Zion Williamson, he looks fat.
Zion Williamson has not bought into his own career yet, and that is disappointing.
I saw the brother go to the free throw line. He looked like he had a belly. He'll eat the table.
Because he eating fast food. He can't overcome a bad diet.
He's not in shape. He doesn't run.
3 days later.
I really don't like the establishment media, whether it's sports media, cultural media, political media. I'm very skeptical of it. And I've learned in recent years that the majority of the time, any of the narratives they put out are usually wrong. And I really, really like to see it when their narratives get smashed. So I'm going to try to make a video in defense of Zion Williamson. I'm not a Pelicans fan, I'm a Heat fan, and I'm no more of a Zion Williamson fan than the average NBA fan who just wants to see him tap into his true potential because he's such an anomaly of an athlete and people recognize how good this kid can be. After that Lakers game, for the next 48 hours, my Twitter feed and my YouTube feed, ESPN and all this stuff, it was just flooded with all of this anti-Zion slander and that he's fat and he's out of shape and he's a wash and he's a bust, and Stephen A. Smith talking about how chefs are telling him that he eats everything but the table and all this stuff, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, didn't this dude have like a 33-point game like 8 days ago where he shot 11 for 11? So like something's not adding up here. If he's so awful and out of shape and everything is so bad, how is he putting up those numbers only 8 days prior? Then I dig into it a little more and the narrative makes even less sense to me. I do a little digging here and I find out that the previous 9 games that he played in leading up to the quarterfinal in-season tournament game against the Kings, the Pelicans were 7-2 in the 9 games that Zion played. And he averaged 25 points per game, 5 rebounds a game, and 6 assists per game, while shooting 62% from the field. And those numbers are all pretty much close to or better than his career average. And then there's also the context of him coming back from an injury. You know, he got hurt early January last year, still getting back into the swing of things. He's played in 75% of the games this season. So basically, I'm not buying what I'm being sold. You know, does that make sense? So this video is going to be biased. It's going to be biased towards Zion because everything has been so negative and just lambasting this kid lately. I want to try to do something that offers more of an optimistic perspective. So let's just analyze some stats. His stats so far are not terrible. He's averaging almost 23 points per game, 5.6 rebounds per game, 4.7 assists per game. It's down a little bit from his career average, but like I said before, in the 9 games he played leading up to the quarterfinal win against the Kings, the Pelicans were 7-2 in the games he played, and he averaged 25, 5, and 6 while shooting 62%. Pretty good. And even in that Kings game where the Pelicans won by 10, Kings are solid, 11-8 at this point. Pelicans were 12-10 at this point. And someone can say, oh, well, Zion only had 10 points. Well, he had 10, 6, and 6. And you had a game where you had 6 guys in double figures. You won by 10. And you have other really good guys on your team, like Brandon Ingram, who had 40 points last night against the Wizards. Brandon Ingram, this game, had 30 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. I went on StatMuse to check the plus minus thing, and out of the 5 starters, it was only Ingram and Zion that were pluses. Zion was a +4. So what does this tell you? This tells you that the Pelicans are a deep team, and they don't need to have Zion scoring 30-something points every night in order for them to win. You can get 6 guys in double figures. You can have a guy like Brandon Ingram put up big numbers and still end up with a win against a really good Kings team. And that's also good for Zion because it takes pressure off of him physically because, and we'll get into this later with his body type, he is such an anomaly of a basketball player as far as his body type goes, combined with his playing style of being so explosive while weighing 280 whatever plus pounds he weighs. And his style with that explosiveness is a lot of torque on his body, which explains a lot of the injuries. So for him to play in a game where they can win and he only plays 28 minutes and only needs to score 10, 6, and 6 and be a +4, that's pretty nice. Okay, so let's get to the infamous Lakers game. Here's my theory, and a lot of people have this theory. They were hungover. That team, to me, was clearly hungover. I think what happened, they had that game against the Kings on Monday, December 4th. We all saw the interview of when the reporter asked Zion and Brandon Ingram what they would do when they go to Vegas, and they clearly, by their reaction, implied that they were going to party pretty hard.
You mentioned that you guys like to have fun. Have you thought at all about how you're going to celebrate if you're able to pull this off?
Man. Nah, we ain't thought about it, but I know it's gonna be a good time.
They played the Kings on Monday, December 4th. They had the 5th and 6th off. So they probably got to Vegas and partied really hard on the 5th or the 6th, or they probably partied so hard on the 5th that they were still hungover by the 7th. Because everybody on that team was bad. Their lead scorer was Trey Murphy III, who had 14 points and didn't even start. That's how bad they were. And in defense of Zion, he was 6 for 8 from the field. Once again, context is important. That was a game where you're going up against the Lakers. It's the first Vegas in-season tournament. It's nationally televised. You have Chuck and Shaq there. I saw a few people mention that Chuck said that he had never watched a full Zion game or something like that.
This is the first time that I'm gonna sit and watch Zion play a full game.
You're a sports broadcaster and you've never seen this guy play a full basketball game? And I understand he's missed whatever it was, 64% of his career games or whatever that number is, but you've never seen Zion Williamson play a full game? So when you have so much attention on that one game, and then you end up having a game that's that bad and that's ugly, everybody's going to focus in on that game and not pay attention to anything positive you did leading up to that game. And we all saw the viral footage of him chugging up the court and all that stuff. And give credit where credit's due. The Lakers played great. The Lakers really brought it. And the Pelicans were just out to lunch that day, no pun intended. So then the Pelicans had the 8th, 9th, and 10th off. They got to sober up. And they had a game against the Timberwolves. And Zion killed it. He had his best game of the season, 36 points in 33 minutes on efficient shooting. So I'm not going to sit here and say that he smashed the narrative into a million pieces, but he definitely put some cracks in it and showed that he can absolutely still be that guy. But I think the big gripe with him amongst a lot of fans and other players and the organization is that they need him to do that on a consistent basis. So when you take the fact that the Pelicans were 7-2 in those games leading up to the Kings game, where he averaged 25 points per game, and he had that really big 33-point game against the Sixers where he shot 11 for 11, and I know Joel Embiid didn't play, but still, 11 for 11, 33 points is still great. He had the one bad Lakers game, and then came back, had 36 points against the Timberwolves. No Ann Edwards, but still, 36 points is 36 points, and he's in there against those giants like Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns and all that stuff. And he's putting up pretty nice numbers, and yet I'm being told that he's fat and out of shape and a bust and all that stuff, and the whole thing it's just not adding up. So let's get into one of the most obvious things about Zion Williamson, and it's his body type and the type of athlete that he is, and the fact that this kid is such an unbelievable anomaly of an athlete, especially when it comes to basketball, that it's really ridiculous. Because I was thinking to myself, okay, who is the closest to Zion's height and weight in the NBA? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's someone like Grant Williams, who is also 6'6" like Zion, and he clocks in at around 236 pounds. Now Zion is 50 pounds more than him. That is insane. So that goes to show you just how much of an outlier Zion is. There's 3 different body types. You have an ectomorph, a mesomorph, and an endomorph. You take like a Chet Holmgren, he's an ectomorph. You take most NBA players, most athletes, I'd say would be a mesomorph, but say a Jimmy Butler, for instance, would be more of a mesomorph. And then you have Zion, who would be more of an endomorph. And there's a bunch of amazing basketball players that are like this. Basketball players come in all sorts of unique shapes and sizes. You look at a guy like a Luka, or even a James Harden, or a Jokic, or a Kyle Lowry. They're all, I think, would be more in the endomorph kind of body types. They might not be super aesthetic. They're a little bit on the bulky side, but they're still very, very strong and very, very capable of being phenomenal basketball players, despite not being, sculpted like a Giannis or a Jimmy Butler kind of physique. So with Zion, you see this footage of him, some of these highlights from college, and he is just absolutely superhuman. But you have to remember, he's also 18, 19 years old at the time. Now that he's getting more into his mid-20s, he's dealt with a bunch of injuries already, combined with the fact that he's growing up and he's filling out even more, you wonder, with his natural body type, can he ever get back to that place he was in the Duke days, even with the best nutritionists and diets and workouts and all that stuff? Sometimes it's really, really hard to fight your genetics and how your body develops. And of course, you wouldn't want Zion to lose too much weight, because just look at how he played against the Timberwolves. The reason he was able to score so many points was because he was able to get into the paint and kind of play that bully ball with Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns and all that. And even though they're much taller than him, he's able to use that bulk to get in there and play bully ball. So he would kind of have to find that fine line between being in peak physical conditioning and shape and through diet and nutrition and discipline and all that stuff, while maintaining a healthy amount of bulk to still do what he does. Now, as far as him playing bully ball, that's fine until you go up a guy like LeBron or an AD or some big physical tough dude who's going to be able to keep you out of the paint. And that's where he needs to develop more to his game, like improve his shot, be better at with his back to the basket, because he's not always going to be able to play the bully ball thing. Ultimately, all this stuff is going to come down to what Zion wants. All the flack that he's getting, a lot of it comes from a place of people just wanting to see this kid reach his true potential, because he's such a once-in-a-generation kind of anomaly of an athlete. And then when you see him with the girl drama or in the weight stuff and some of those not so glamorous highlights from the Lakers games, the injuries, it adds up. And that's why a narrative exists. And I'm not surprised that narrative exists, and it's, part of it's kind of justified. But ultimately, it's up to him. I mean, you can do the weight clause stuff. There's these rumors about that he's not following the diet and that certain people in the organization aren't happy with him. If I were him, which I'm not, I can't relate to him. It's kind of a stupid way to look at it. But if I were him and I really wanted to reach my peak physical potential and conditioning, and I know that I have a weakness when it comes to eating bad food, I would get some kind of nutritionist trainer to just be my shadow for like 3 months. And I would sit down with everybody at the New Orleans Pelicans organization and say, okay, what is my target weight? What's my target body fat, my target body mass index, my ideal mile time, 400 time, all that stuff. What's the diet? What do I have to do to get there? And I would just lock down for however long it takes to reach those goals. There's a lot of healthy food that actually tastes pretty good. If he's working out hard enough and burning enough calories, he could still eat a ton of food as long as it's healthy, quality food. But you know the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And ultimately, it's up to Zion if he wants to really, really reach his true potential, or he probably is talented enough to where he could kind of like, you know, put in 50% of the work and coast to averaging 22 points a game or whatever. I understand why people were kind of mad because you had the hype of this generational talent. You were the #1 pick. You got a huge contract. You have huge endorsements. You're getting paid superstar money. So the expectations are going to be very high. It's a bargain that you make with the organization that employs you and gives you all this money. You have to hold up your end of the bargain. That's how it works. When you look at the big picture of it, he got hurt January of 23. Him and the Pelicans were playing pretty well at that point. Like I said, even in the game he got hurt, 26 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds in 28 minutes. The Pelicans were 23 and 14. So things were going pretty well. Then he got hurt, and that was kind of that for a while. Who knows how long he went without playing basketball? I don't really know. Maybe Pelicans fans have a better idea of that. There could be some kind of method to the madness here where he's using the season to get in shape. We've seen players in the past do that. Shaq used to do that. I'm not saying that's a good way to be. It could be the kind of thing where he didn't really start getting into playing basketball again until the summer because of this injury. And they're kind of slowly ramping up his playing, and little by little he's working out and getting back into shape as the season goes on. So in time for post All-Star break, he's where he wants to be. I think Zion's going to be okay. I predict that the Pelicans are going to be a playoff team this year, and that Zion will play his first playoff series this season. I don't buy into this narrative, that post-Lakers game narrative I was being fed about him being so fat and so out of shape and such a bust and all that kind of stuff, because the numbers say otherwise. I do believe that there is a lot of room for his improvement. The conditioning, getting into better shape, adding layers to his game as far as like improving his rebounding, improving his shot, improving his foul shot, and being just overall consistent and consistently healthy too. And he has all the best resources in the world, and people that want to help him get to his peak physical potential that suits his playing style best. And he has a really good basketball team surrounding him right now with a lot of good players. I think it's just a question as to whether is Zion going to be a good player or a great player, because I think he just has so much raw talent to where he could coast and be a good player. But if he really, really put his mind to it, he could be a great player. And everybody wants to see him be great. So I think that's it. That was my attempt to defend Zion Williamson. I don't know, do I sound like an idiot? Maybe. Let me know in the comments. I'm used to doing Heat videos. You see all my previous videos, they're all Miami Heat videos. I'm just trying something different. Got a little bored doing a post Miami Heat video after every single game. I just want to try something different. So I'm going to be doing these videos once in a while, along with Heat videos as well. Let me know what you think. Is Zion a bust? Have you lost all hope for Zion Williamson, or do you think he's going to be okay? I think he's going to be okay. I hope he's okay. That's it. Go Heat.